Ouch.
All right, take it away, Joanna.
All right, good evening. As Truett said, ESSER, the acronym stands for Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief. It was enacted with the CARES Act and it started March 13th, 2020. And it's going to, this ESSER 1 portion is going to be ending September 30th of this year. The main focus was for preventing, preparing for, and responding to COVID-19, which is great because we did have a few expenses. I mean, we didn't really have as much as a lot of other school districts had, luckily, but it allows for cost of activities that are that's really the most important thing is the addressing the learning loss. The funding is based on the same proportionate share as Title I Part A, and the amount that we were awarded at the very beginning for the ESSER 1 is $171,470, which has either already been spent or is earmarked to be spent. So that's ESSER 1. Amanda. ESSER 2 came into play with the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplementals Appropriations Act, or CRRSA. A lot of folks are still trying to figure out when we're going to be getting ESSER 2, but it does extend from the March 13th, 2020 start date, just like ESSER 1, but it continues through 2022. It was released December 2020, and the main focus was different than ESSER 1. It was looking at reopening, safely operating, and addressing the impact of coronavirus on the students and teachers, staff. It still wants you to focus on learning loss. The funding is based off of the same proportionate share, and we have an estimated total. TEA gave us an estimated total of $737,321. But as of, and I can say as of, what's today, the 20th, it has not been released. We're still waiting to hear information on this. I did most recently hear that it was going to be released, or we're going to hear some more information after this legislative session was closed or completed. So maybe we'll be hearing something else about that. But it was also brought into play whenever President Trump was still in office. And so the main one that has been released has been with the current president. So it's a little more, there's a little more information on it. But let's go to the next. So yeah, thank you, ESSER 3. And it came into play with the American Rescue Plan Act. If you'll notice, it starts the same time frame, March 13, 2020. But it goes to September 2023. Something else to really focus on and to remember is that when it says 2023, that means that we have to have all the funds expended, and we're not getting it more. We're not getting more the next year, the next year, the next year. This is it. This was released in March of 2021. The main focus was still the same as ESSER 2. They do require a minimum 20% reserve for learning loss, which opens the door to using the remaining portion, remaining 80%, for a lot of other different things, not just the learning loss. The funding was still based off the same Title I Part A funding. They split it into two payments. The initial award total is 2/3, and it's $111,007, and the remaining total is $555,503 for a total of 1.6. Now, the first half, it hasn't really been released yet, but we do know that that's the amount that we're going to get. We have a very long, labor-intensive 21-page application that we're having to fill out in order to get that. And then once it's received and they give us our no-go, we will get our second share. But that's kind of just a down-to-earth basic knowledge of ESSER 1, 2, and 3.
On that remaining award total, to the folks on here tonight, we don't have a date on when we'd receive the second half. So there are some limitations to our planning. You know, if you go back a slide, go back one, Amanda, please. in that one bullet point there where you see the 1/3, the initial award, versus the 2/3, excuse me, I had them backwards, the initial award of the 2/3, that's the planning amount we have to look at for the 21-22 school year. You can't even consider that remaining amount to total that almost 1.7 because that's coming at a later date. And you almost have to think of that as the other half to continue some of the things you're starting in 21-22. So whatever you do, you have to look at it as a split funded grant over the next 2 years. And then it goes away for anything that's not, hadn't been spent. And then like Joanna said, we're not getting anything else. The unknown, like she said, is ESSER 2. And that was a lot of money. You saw it was $700,000+, but we believe we'll hear more about it in June, just even when we're going to get it and what we can use it for. Right now, we have to plan as if we're not getting it. And as soon as we hear something about it, we can use that money, hopefully, with this amount as well. And so the next slide, it gave us a chance to dream big, but with some limitations. And this is what I've learned since our first presentation. We have to make sure that we keep going back to these big three. The first one says that anything we do with this money has to be related to COVID learning loss or learning gaps with our kids. So it always has to go back to this piece. And you saw this in all three of the funding sources. So as we ask and dream big and start looking at data and discussing what we'd like to do with the funds, it always needs to go back to how can we intervene and support our struggling learners. And so keep that in mind, because we've seen on blogs and we all subscribe to different things. Joanna belongs to the one for other business office folks. I belong to some with superintendents. Amanda belongs to a lot of teaching and learning ones and HR ones. And we're seeing some wild stuff that doesn't go back to this first thing you see up here. Like we saw one about, since I'm looking at Dorsey on here, there's actually one posted about remodeling a band hall. And we're trying to figure out how that will ever be approved because it doesn't go back to learning loss or gaps.
Dorsey.
Just because they want new carpet and paint in their band hall. And so we're seeing some things that we know aren't going to go through, but then we're seeing some really good ones that we'll share on the next slide that fit the criteria. And then of course, we've already started a list based on feedback from the campuses. Number two, you have to have data and a plan tied to it. A lot of districts are using their comprehensive needs assessment. As you've heard here at the end of the school year, we've tied ours back to the Race to A plan so that everything we're working on is associated with the Effective Schools framework that we've been working on with ensuring that in 2 years, each of our campuses are at that 90 or above threshold for the state letter grade. And so that's the source we're using, the data we're using, the tables that have the progression charts, all the different things we're looking at across the campuses, if it's in place now and at what level, if you've been serving on those committees. And from that plan can come the dream big pieces of how we want to spend the money to get those things that are not where they need to be on that framework to fully implement it on the framework. And that's our guide. Of course, we're hearing about STAR data. I've been getting a text from Carrie and Chuck, and Amanda has been putting out a table, and I saw Carrie had started a table as well at the elementary, and I've seen some really good information and data and a lot to celebrate. I saw 6th grade results today that were out of this world. I saw 5th grade science that just wowed me. I mean, incredible data. I saw some biology scores today on one thread that were like 92% on the EOC, and just a lot of great things to celebrate. And I haven't seen it all. Those are just the ones I remembered from text and in an email. But man, we've made a lot of great strides, and I can't wait to see the rest of that data. But that data also needs to be involved in this. You know, it's our latest it's our latest data piece from all the interims we've been doing with being out for COVID, and that will help drive some of our decisions to see where we are. Then the last one, I already hinted at this. Remember, it is a grant, so you have to think of it as a 2-year grant and not even equally funded over those 2 years. So for example, if you want to add 5 interventionists across the district in math and reading, or instructional coaches, or a crisis counselor, or a social worker, whatever you want to add, say it's 5 positions. We usually have to budget around 60,000 per position. So that alone is $300,000. So you can't just say out of that 1.7 million, we're spending 300,000. You got to double it to 600,000 because it's for 2 years. And then you got to make sure that you funded it where you didn't spend all of the 2/3 on the front, where you don't have enough to cover it with the 1/3 for year 2 of the 22-23 school year. So there's some things you've got to remember, and this grant is a little tricky in that area to make sure that we're funding everything appropriately over the full 2 years. So you definitely got to think about prioritizing and then budgeting, and remembering again that it goes away. And so anything we do past 22-23, we're responsible for. So if we fall in love with these positions and think, man, they got us to an A, and man, that crisis counselor is helping, and all these kids are getting served in a way we've never been able to do before. And maybe we bought a new writing program that's just amazing. We're getting great results from it. Well, that school year 23-24, we're responsible for the funding to continue those things. So we've got to make sure we can do that. And there are things that we want to keep within our budget, and that we can actually budget, I probably should say, in order to still have those things moving forward as a part of our West ISD. So I just wanted to hit those 3 things, make sure you understood the grant intentions, and we simply called it the big 3. So when you see us talk about that, that's what they are. Again, learning loss or gaps, struggling learners, our race to an A plan, and then it's a 2-year grant that we've got to fund equally over those years, and then it's gone. All right, next slide, I believe, is Joanna. She's going to talk about ESSER 3 allowable uses. And this is a really important slide. And these are the examples straight from the grant. And so we're going to share this information and then talk about how this ties into the race to A plan.
Obviously, a lot of this is going to focus on sanitation and facilities. There have been a lot of school districts in the TASBO forums that I've been involved with that have crazily wanted to put AC in their buses. And I mean, that was one of the very first things someone mentioned. And then there was like at least 6 or 7 of them that jumped on the bandwagon for that. So, I mean, it just goes to show you have no idea what is needed in each district. And that's the reason why they wanted to do this for an extended amount of time for 2 years, because they wanted to be sure it wasn't a race. They wanted you to be able to sit back and really think about what you need in order to bridge those learning gaps. And then also with all these other additional pieces in it. The 3rd bullet item is mental health and behavior services and supports. That's really an interesting, different topic that a lot of folks haven't really focused on in the past. You know, you think about, especially with COVID, sanitation and facilities, that's one of your main things, but in technology. But mental health and behavior services is definitely going to be needed for these kids that are coming back to school, and staff too. With regards to that staffing, they're allowing tutors to make sure there's reduced class sizes, and then they're even talking about incentive pay, especially with instructional coaching and leadership. This one is a little tricky. With regards to the forum that I read off of, there's some folks who come in and they said, oh yes, this is a great idea, let's do this. But then I also see other things from folks that say, oh no, that's not an allowable use. But I mean, it's there in black and white. That came from the grant itself, that is what you can use it for. But as Mr. Truitt said, that's a 2-year thing. You know, after that, you have to figure out where you're going to fund it from. Professional development obviously is going to be one, especially with high quality instructional materials, dyslexia, the reading academies, and technology definitely. Then the second to last, extended instructional time, and we've already planned on doing this. We actually have another grant that Amanda got for $18,000 that we wanted to use for summer learning and summer school and this extended year type thing. So we had already earmarked some stuff for that, but now we realize that we can actually expand it. And then the last one is technology. And a lot of people thought initially that's exactly what they were going to spend their money on, was devices, Chromebooks, things for the kids, hotspots. There's even been a school district that is talking about putting up its own tower in order to help service the rural area that they have, so people can have their Wi-Fi and their internet access, which is a great idea, but whether or not that is allowed, I'm not sure. So it's just kind of like the sky's the limit. Let's think of all of these different things. And maybe if you've got any, that's the reason why we wanted to have this. We want to have some ideas. I mean, we obviously know what we need and what we've already planned for, but to get it from the folks who are on the, you know, in the ditches, so to speak, we need that information. So.
Okay, I'm going to take it away now for, I wanted to kind of talk about how this grant can support our work with the Race to an A. What I love about it is this came out at a time that really aligned with our 2023 vision, Race to an A, and the intentions of this grant are also the same as the intentions we had as a district when we all came together to come up with our Race to an A plan, which was to help to make our kids reach their best potential and help to intervene where there were gaps in learning. And so I just kind of put together a few slides that show what Joanna just went over versus our plan and how they go hand in hand. So just looking at this one about staffing, there's a few examples there listed that Joanna went over with, such as reduced class sizes, tutoring. Think about the ESF Race to an A when we talk about what our biggest needs are for education and intervening in our kids' education that have gaps. We talked about the goal in 2.1C and D, where we're going to target and come up with personalized strategies to retain staff, particularly high-performing staff, which goes right along with what you see up there in the staffing allowance for ESSER 3, and also placing our teachers in the most strategic areas that they can serve the best in the best capacity for students that need their attention. So those two goals in ESF line exactly up with our allowable expense in ESSER 3 of staffing. Also, when we talk about professional development, a huge part of ESSER 3 is about providing our teachers the training individualized to what they feel are their strengths and weaknesses, and that align up to helping our kids reach their growth potential. When you look at that in the ESF plan, it's in 4.1C and D, talks about instructional materials, making sure you have what you need to be the best teacher you are, making sure you have the training to use those resources, and in D, talking about making sure that that professional development is ongoing and focused on the content you're responsible for, but also job embedded. So it's throughout the year and providing you ongoing support through that year in early childhood through grade 12 in all subjects that support the student's learning. Another important area is about the extended instructional time. And you heard Joanna talk about our summer plans. We've really changed what that looks like in elementary and middle. And we want to look at it more as a preview to the grade level coming up. And so that is a way that we can use these funds to meet our goal 5.3B, and having our teachers use corrective instruction through data and looking at trends. And we're going to target students over the next few weeks. We're going to be looking at STAR data and year data and how they did. And we're going to strategically invite students to these July, August summer sessions to get them ready for the next grade level in math and reading specifically. So that's another way it lines up. Technology you heard mentioned. For us, ESSER 3, when we look at technology, it's about getting technology into the students and teachers' hands. We still have another grade level that we'd like to make a one-to-one, that's third grade. That was always in the plan, but this is a way to be able to bring that to fruition. And then how do we get teachers the devices that the kids have so that they can use those as a teaching tool as well, which lines up with ESF goal 4.1C providing the correct and most effective materials to our teachers to use with the students. But one we don't always think about is mental health service and support, which I feel is a very big part of ESSER 3 because of the situation that brought about this grant. And if you look at ESF Race to an A, you might just think it's academic, but to be able to get to that academic, we had to have goals like 3.1D, where it talks about culture and climate. And we can't get that culture and climate for our students and our staff if they don't have that mental health and wellness support. And so I believe that it also lines up with Race to an A in that it's supporting the wellness and health of our staff and the mental health and wellness of our students as well.
This is just a timeline that we added just to let y'all know about when we're going to need to start working on stuff. April 27th, TEA released the allocation amounts and we were all excited. And then April 28th, they gave us a 21-page application that we needed to fill out. They gave us quite a bit of time. July 27th is the due date for all of the application and uses. But then once it's reviewed by TEA, they will then give us the NOGA and we have to continue with the process. Something that we did not mention earlier was our ESF plan was just, we did it the right time for this need, because part of this grant requires you to have this thought out plan of what you're going to use it for and how you're going to tie it into all of those items that they want you to focus on in the grant. But with that, we have to create a web page that says this whole ESF plan. It shows all of our steps, excuse me, all of our steps, all of the things that we've thought of and how we're going to move forward. And TEA is going to be auditing that. I mean, every 6 months, they're going to take a look at our plan online and they're going to say, okay, are they following this? If they're not, then we're going to, we need to take our money back. And so that's definitely not something we want to happen, but just another piece of the puzzle. But this is just gives you a little bit of an idea of how long it's gonna take to get all that information together.
And I want to caution everybody on this particular timeline as well. For the teachers that are on tonight, if you look at that July 27th date, if we wait till then, we're going to be looking for some of these staffing needs that I know you guys are dream bigging. I'm going to make it into a verb, dreaming big about in August when school starts. People can't get out of their contracts and we can't find, if any of you move into those roles, we won't be able to find people to fill your current jobs. And so this timeline is really not advantageous for everything we've been sharing up until this slide. And so the sooner we get this done, the better. And these are the things we have to do to get this done. Go to the next slide, please, Amanda. The next steps. Obviously, this first one is what we're doing tonight. This is our 5th time to share this information. I'm sorry again, I had to cancel Tuesday night, but you guys know what happened that day and the struggles then, and we were going to see the family and things, and ESSER 3 really didn't matter on that day, so it wasn't exactly on my radar or very important with all that was going on. So we kept tonight's and we'll schedule more. We know we need to do an article in the West News. We know we need to do a survey online, like on SurveyMonkey or a Google Doc or something, where we get feedback from, they mentioned students, parents, and of course staff, and then the community. And so, of course, we don't want it to be but a couple questions, because we've learned if it's too long, folks don't complete the survey or they quit after the first couple of questions. So we need to make sure we're strategic in how we design that document. You already heard Joanna mention this website. It's going to be off the main page. What I'm going to do is take that COVID-19 box off the main page and turn it into an ESSER one, since You've heard about Abbott's rule and after June 4th, and so we can move that COVID main page off and put this ESSER one up, and we're just going to post everything, our links, our documents, our meeting times and dates, so everyone can see it and we can be as transparent as possible. We've got to form this ESSER committee, and it has specialized stakeholder representation by titles and roles, similar to the SHAC and the DAT. And so we're putting that together, making sure we have every required spot with a name by it and someone who's actively going to come to these meetings. And then frankly, they're open to the public. So anybody else that would like to come, we'd love to have them. So we've been asking at the DAT and SHAC and the board meeting and these information meetings, if anybody wants to join the advisory committee to help us work through the 21-page document that you heard Joanna mention earlier. We'd love to have you, and you can just throw your name into the chat and Amanda will write it down and we'll make sure you get the invite. But the first one's got to happen next week, and that's challenging with all the events that are going on and even things we moved from this week to next week because of the event I mentioned earlier. And we've got graduation, you name it, it's happening next week, frankly. And somewhere in there, we've got to have our first ESSER advisory committee meeting. Fun times. We've got to look at all the data. You already heard us share what we're looking at, and thankfully, we already have that mostly in place. So we're really talking about our attendance and grades and all of our special POPs data here for the year. Now that we have some things that, that we didn't have last year at this time, the STAR data as well. But some folks are having to craft really the equivalent of our ESF Race to an A plan. So we're already ahead of that. We've got to hold these advisory meetings that I mentioned, committee meetings. We have to schedule a board workshop. And so we're thinking the advisory committee meets and gets the process going and starts nailing down some ideas, some plans. We get it budget figures, how it could look on the campuses. We do some research, line it out, really put the why behind it. And then we have to have a board workshop to explain all of that, what we've done up until that point, so they can ask questions and be a part of it as well. And when they meet, you have to schedule a meeting, obviously, if 4 or more of them are present. We have to hold a public hearing at a board meeting. The next one is coming up fast on June the 8th. And so trying to get everything done, or excuse me, June 9th. Sorry, 8th is a Tuesday. 9th, that's a lot to get done here in that 2.5 weeks, but we're going to do our best to get as much of this put together before that board meeting. And if we can't get it done by June 9th, the board is aware we may need a special called meeting at the end of the month to get this going, so we don't have to wait further into the summer. And then finally, you heard Joanna mention this. This is a grant, so there is an application. She shared it's 21 pages, and there's a lot more to do, obviously, than just 21 pages because of all the stuff we have to add to those 21 pages. And we've got to get that to TEA ASAP so we can start our hiring process and implementation process and scheduling and getting dates set and all that. And she mentioned the 6-month review period, which is unusual, but it shows they really want to monitor and ensure that the plan is being utilized in the ways that we said it would be, or there are some consequences, as you heard Joanna say. Here's the problem also, or challenge, better yet. If we try to change the plan or use the money in a different way, we have to go back through the whole process again. It's similar to the District of Innovation plan where you have to start over and go back and re-up and do all the meetings and have the board look at it. So it's imperative what we set out to do for approval with the board and then TEA is the plan, and that it's what we're sticking to and hoping to use for the 2 years. And I'm not saying we can't change it, just that there's a process to do it. And so it's best that we set out on the right track with the data and the different planning pieces here the first go around. On the next slide, these are what we've heard so far as submitted ESSER 3 ideas. Really, these are dream big ideas because there's no data or budget figures or ESF plan pieces tied to all of these. We're just looking at what folks think we need based on anecdotal even, but also some hard facts and data from things that we've been talking about at PLTs and DAT and SHAC. And so I just want to stress that what you see up here doesn't mean we're doing all these things. We're gathering feedback. We're gathering ideas. We're wanting our staff and soon parents, students, and community to dream big about things they'd like to see us add over the next 2 years. But based on the big three, don't forget the big three, it's about closing learning gaps, struggling learners, COVID learning loss. And then what we do, remember, it's a 2-year grant that we have to think of the money as in split in half. You can see summer programs are down there. You already heard about the other grant Amanda got. You already saw that we upped the pay for summer programming because frankly, we weren't hearing from folks because I know you're tired and I know you needed a break, but we have to have our summer programs, especially with how we've shifted it to a front end model back to school rather than June for elementary and junior high in particular. And we needed folks to work it. And so we got a lot more responses based on moving it to $40 an hour from the 20. And we're glad to do that. And we'll continue to do that. But what we're doing even this summer and summer programs up for discussion, and we can even dream big about how it looks in the next 2 summers. So something to think about there. Interventionists, obviously this comes up a lot when you think about math and reading. When you think about elementary, we have a reading and math interventionists. Maybe we need more. We definitely get asked all the time about, can we add them at middle school and high school? Because we have kids that are struggling readers that are, you know, juniors and seniors even in high school. And this would be something good for them as well. That leads to block discussions about time and minutes and how we're doing 6th grade math and ELAR and how that can look even at 7th and 8th grade, for example. Special education staff, this means many different things to whoever we're talking to. It means everything from aides, additional aides, instructional aides, special ed aides helping in the classrooms and assisting with different plans that are being implemented based on our kids' needs. It's led to discussions about other special education teachers. It's past programs come up, things at the district level with testing and ARD pieces and diagnosticians. So that one, I just put staff on this slide because it means many different things. Credit recovery program has come up at the high school and the need for ensuring all of our graduates get the credits they need to graduate with their cohort. Thinking about our dropouts, our potential dropouts, and that credit recovery, online recovery for credits piece. Having someone really targeting and tracking our at-risk kids for graduation and being there for them, mothering them, checking on them, coaching them up, and making sure that all their steps are getting done to walk with their class at Trojan Field. The crisis counseling and other counseling services have come up a lot, especially with all the needs we're seeing with our kids. If you think about Maslow, we were talking about reading and math and data and STAR, and man, they have so much other stuff going on in their lives. It's hard for us even to get to homework and assessments when they've got all kinds of crisis, you know, going on in their life. And so we know there's a need for that and at multiple levels and in multiple ways. Tutoring programs more robust, finding folks that can help with that, and that can be before school, after school, weekends. It can look many different ways. We've been asked about a set writing framework and program for the district, and different names and types and trainings have been thrown our way at all 3 different campuses, and so we definitely need to take a look at that. A lot of professional development has come up, especially with COVID. Not allowing us to travel and a lot of places not doing conferences and summits and different things, even locally at Region 12, that whole discussion about can we start going this stuff again, you know, science conferences and math conferences and TCEA and all those things that are out there to come back and bring neat things and great things to our classrooms and using some of this money and budgeting it for those purposes, even locally as well. Scheduling PD pieces and how we use our red days on our calendar and people we can bring in to support and materials and different things for those days. We've got instructional resources, which is big one, materials for the classrooms, wish lists. We got a long list from the elementary of things they'd like to see. Saw some awesome math and science pieces on there. Saw some social studies, even from middle school, ended up on the list for us to see and price and see how it fits our framework. This next one has come up a lot about third grade needing Chromebooks, since STAR will be online for 3 through EOC. And right now our Chromebook initiative stops at grade 4. Of course, goes all the way through the seniors, but getting that grade 3 in and getting some more technology to the younger grades. And then the next one, giving teachers the souped up Chromebook that has the flip screen, where you can take it back and forth between home and your classrooms, and where it docks into a station at your desk where you don't have the desktop any longer, but a device you can take to and from school. And so this is a way to do that as well. Student and staff wellness comes up a lot. This was discussed at the SHAC meeting really the last couple of years, about things we can do to support you and in different programs. And I know we've done some things with healthy eating and living at the different campuses, but we've talked about a track around the combined campuses for exercise purposes, and a true wellness program that's spelled out for every month of the school year. A lot of neat things have come from this, including this employee assistant program that goes along with it, about available counseling pieces, financial advice, insurance questions, all the different things out there that our employees need, that you can use a phone number or something online to connect with when you have a need and don't have someone to talk to. You need an expert, and that's something that we're looking to provide as well. The student meal bags have come up just because of COVID. The program kind of was put on pause, but even when we were part of it, it always didn't provide the bags we needed to meet the needs of all of our kids that just don't have the food and things at home that we wish they would have. And so that appeared on the list as well, and a very worthy thing for us to consider. In this next one, it was the parent piece that came up in a couple of the discussions about social worker, parent academies, and not the parent academies that we host per se, about training for parents on how to be a parent. I mean, that simple, I guess, would be the way to say it. And you're all thinking of families where have struggling home lives, where you just wished you could take that parent aside and mentor and coach them and go, here's some things you could do at home to get the family back on track, and to have study time, and to have a meal on the table, and help you with how the bills work and availability of services, and all these things that they're not doing, where we go to the homes, like when we deliver food, and we're like, whoa, our kids live in that type of a situation, and we wonder why the things are happening at school that are happening at school. And so that came up. And so that's what we've heard so far. Some of those were broad, where I was trying to give you some specific information. All of them worthy, and all of them need to be fleshed out, and some price tags attached, and how it could look at the different campuses. They need to be prioritized based on the amounts that you heard Joanna share, and based on our data and planning, and where the key points are as far as pressure points to our system to ensure the ESF is in progress for the next 3 years. And so we left that last bullet point there about other things we didn't mention. This is where you can chat or unmute and say, hey, have y'all thought about this or this or this? And we'll write them down, and we'll add them to these bullet points and add another slide for the next one. And we'll just keep going through. And then at the first advisory committee meeting, we have a starting point, because we will have researched these things to share out with the committee. So are there other things out there you want us to consider? Maybe affirmation, we're on the right track. Maybe you saw something on the list where you're like, Truett, that's a difference maker. Maybe there was something you saw on there that got your attention, or maybe 2 or 3 things.
You know, Mr. Jordan, I can look at it and see, particularly in the area of our special ed and interventions, those would be some of the biggest impact things that I think we can do, because we have so many kids with so many different deficits that we need more people, more hands-on to really make that impact. That's going to get the big bang for the buck.
I would have to agree on the intervention. That's what I've seen work in other school districts. Having those people in there that can specify instruction to students that have gaps and get them up to speed. That way they're not lagging behind, or they feel like they're lagging behind.
Thank you, Mark. Anybody else have something to add? Maybe, again, something you saw that you liked, or something that was missing maybe? Deborah Humphrey says, love the idea of more SPED support and writing curriculum and resources. Agreed, Deborah. The writing one came up for all 3 campuses. And, you know, when we had the IR situation and then put the Race to A in place, the focus went to all the ELAR, or really the reading piece of ELAR and math. And we've got to get back to the writing framework as well. So totally agree.
Yes, I love that. I think, you know, we got to look at reading as literacy, all literacy, writing, spelling, reading. So I love the idea of incorporating more writing and structured writing for sure.
Amen. You got my attention. My degree from Baylor is not education, it's English, and it was an emphasis in creative writing. So you got my attention on that one. Go Bears, by the way. If y'all didn't hear, they're the national champs, just in case you forgot.
Whoop!
Oh, I just saw another one. Sorry, I didn't click on it. I was too busy cheering on my Bears. Sharon said, definitely need additional support for meeting basic needs. Yes. Again, the basic piece of Maslow that I mentioned, that we're expecting things where they're just focused on survival, frankly. We have kids with great needs, emotional, physical, and we talk so much about the academic, and we can't get there with them until we do the other pieces. So totally agree. Anybody else? All right, as always, guys, you can email, call, stop us when you see us on the campuses. We'd love to add other things to the bullet points. I didn't hear anything new tonight so far, unless you're going to share something out that I can add. So that last slide may be on the right track for the first advisory meeting, so we can start planning each of those scenarios and seeing how it could look in West ISD. So thank y'all for being here tonight. We'll make sure we post this Zoom to our West ISD YouTube channel for the folks who couldn't make it. Again, you guys are now experts on all 3 ESSER funds and their usage. And so if you get asked questions at the campuses, or you hear conversations in the lounges, please share what you know, especially the things we can and can't do, which already is confusing some folks, like my band hall analogy. So help us out with that. Appreciate you giving up your Thursday nights. Go ESSER Trojans. We appreciate you guys, and have a great Friday tomorrow. 5 more days of school. We got this. Take care.